What would Jesus drink? Exploring ancient wines on Smokin' and Drinkin'. Hey, welcome back to Smokin' and Drinkin'. I'm Mike, and today we're going to explore the question, what would Jesus drink? It's the Lenten season, and got me to thinking, what did they drink 2,000 years ago? What kind of wine did they have? We know from historical documents in the Bible and things like that that they drank wine. In fact, in the Bible, Jesus turned water into wine. So, got me to thinking, what kind of wine did they drink back then? There's not a lot of historical data giving us clues as to what kind of wine they drank, but we can get kind of close. I've done some research. There's a lot of not a lot. There's some information online, and we're going to get close. Obviously, we're not going to make a wine like it was back then. They did things like making it in amphora jars or clay jars. They used the wild yeast. They didn't use manufactured packaged yeast. They just let the fermenter open and let the naturally occurring yeast in the environment ferment the wine. But we're going to get close. You might ask, did they drink red wine? Did they drink white wine? They did. They drank both. We're going to do a red wine and get as close to approximation as we can with modern technology and techniques. But we are going to make a Greanche style wine. I have a quart of Greanche grape concentrate from California Concentrate Company. They were gracious enough to send me a sample. This is California varietal vintage 2023. So the style of wine that the history, the documents have shown, their wine was a very robust, slightly oxidized wine, probably from using wild yeast and leaving it open to the elements. But oftentimes they sweetened it with fruit or honey. Sometimes they spiced it, kind of like a mulled wine. We're going to add some raisins to help with the tannic values to it. They usually were a little more tannic in nature. Also, we'll add a little bit of sugar, but probably not enough to get the alcohol content up to where we would want it. So we also have some sugar, just white granulated sugar. The red wines were generally reddish brown or amber in color. The white wines were white to light golden. We don't have an amphora jar or a clay jar, so we're going to use a plastic bucket for the fermenter. We're using the plastic 2.5 gallon bucket because we're going to add a pound of raisins, and that takes up quite a bit of volume. And they're just regular store-bought seedless raisins with no preservatives in them. Just the ingredients are just raisins. Got that at the local grocery store. I did chop them up a little bit in the food processor, the little ninja chopper, to kind of help release the sugar from those a little more quickly. Sometimes people will pre-soak them for a day, half a day, just to kind of help them plump up, but they will be soaking for the entire fermentation process time. So not too worried about that. We're going to be using Lalvin K1 V1116. That is a good fruit style wine that with a fairly high ABV tolerance. We're going to be shooting for around probably 14 to 16% alcohol by volume. So, and we have some fermento to help with the yeast nutrient. And of course, about 3/4 of a gallon of purified drinking water. So let's get started. All right. First thing we're going to need to do is, I've already measured out the raisins. Like I said, we have 1 pound of raisins. And this is, all of my stuff has been, all of the equipment has been sanitized in the sand tub with star sand. I'm going to start with the raisins. And I'm just going to put them right into the bucket. I could use a bag, a mesh bag. It might help with cleanup a little bit, but we're going to just siphon it off with the auto siphon when we rack it. So I'm just going to dump the raisins right in. Gotta get them unstuck. So we got our raisins, and then we are going to add our Greanche grape concentrate. Ordered this online. As I said, they gave me some samples. I put them in the freezer so that they would last longer. They're very well sealed. So I'm just gonna, it smells good. Just gonna go ahead and pour that in. So that we can use every last drop. I'm gonna add our drinking water. Some of this purified drinking water to this container so we can get it all out of there. Get it over there. I like to use every bit of it. All right. Sometimes the grape juice concentrate, some of it's thicker than others. This isn't too bad. Sometimes you'll have some of the goop on the bottom, but this didn't have that. So, okay. And then we're going to add the rest of our, I had, like I said, 3/4 of a gallon, 3 quarts. What is that, 96 ounces? I'm just going to go ahead and add that all in there. And then we're going to take a reading so that we know how much sugar we're going to need to add. I'm going to use rubber or silicone spatula or paddle. I have my ridiculously large paddle over there, but this works a little better. Just want to get it stirred up and mixed real well. Now, we're not going to, the raisins are going to add some sugar, but it's not really going to register in the cylinder when we measure our specific gravity, but that's okay. We're going to get close. That in there. Get our graduated cylinder and our hydrometer. Again, it's all been sanitized in the sand tub. Just a little bit. Get our turkey baster. And as usual, we're going to take a reading. I have a feeling we're going to need to add a fair amount of sugar, but don't know. Let's see. Never used this varietal style of grape juice, so I don't know how much sugar it has in it, but, well, looks like quite a bit. We are looking at 1.07, well, let's call it 1.080. That's pretty high. Okay, if we are at 1.080 and we want about 16%, we need to get up to at least 1.1. So if we added a pound of sugar, which we know is 0.046 points of gravity, so if we have 0.046 plus 1.080 would get us 1.126. If we ferment it to dry, that would be 0.126 times 131.25 would get us to 16.5% alcohol. And that's really what we're shooting for. The wines of Jesus' time, of 2,000 years ago, were pretty high in alcohol content. I will say that they did very often dilute their wine after fermentation. In fact, it was considered barbaric not to dilute the wine before drinking. They would have high percentage ABV of wine, but they dilute it almost as much as 1-to-3 ratio. So we probably won't dilute it, but we might, just to get the authenticity. But if we add a pound of sugar, that'll get us up to 16.5% alcohol or thereabouts. It might be a little more because remember there are some raisins in there. So let's get, hello. Well, now we got to sanitize that. I'll go wash that off. Okay, we need our scale, and we need to set it on, the unit of measure is pounds and ounces. We need to tear that out, and then we're going to add 1 pound of sugar. There we go. 1 pound of sugar. 1 pound. Okay. Now you could also, before you added all of your water in, you could make a simple syrup by adding a pound of sugar to the water and heating that up and diluting the sugar into the water. But we'll just give it a good stir, make sure we get all of the sugar dissolved in our must. Let's get this out of the way. Let's put this back in. Again, we don't need to worry about being too careful and creating oxygen, because before alcohol is present, before the fermentation process has started, you want oxygen in there to help the yeast build their colony. So we're just going to go ahead and add our 1 pound of sugar. Now you can see why we opted to use the bucket. We got a lot of volume in here with the raisins and the sugar, and I'm going to go ahead and use this since it's a little bigger. This will help us get this dissolved real well. You can see on this bucket, I put some markings. There's a 2 gallon. I said 2.5. So this rim right here is 2 gallons. We are about right there, which is a little over a gallon, which is perfectly fine. It may affect our readings just a little bit. They may be a little lower than they should be, but not really, because we don't actually have, we have 1 gallon of liquids. So they should be pretty right on. The total volume with the raisins is up over a gallon, but I'm just going to stir this until I don't hear the grainy scratching of the sugar anymore. This could take a little while. I'll just keep going and then go a little longer. All right, I've been stirring for about 5 minutes. I wanted to make sure I got all of the sugar dissolved. I'm noticing there's a couple of little, what look like maybe stems or something in there. That's okay. That's from the raisins, which, as you know, are nothing more than dehydrated or dried grapes. When they make wine, you have stems and leaves and seeds, and sometimes they even have bugs in there. There's all kinds of things, but that helps add the body to the wine, the tannins. Grape juice concentrate doesn't have all of that, so you generally need to add tannins. Again, as we said back 2,000 years ago, their wines were very bold often, which is the tannins attribute to that boldness. The raisins will add some of that. And we are going to also add some powdered wine tannin to help with that as well. Actually, we're not going to do powdered wine tannin. My mistake. We're going to add French oak cubes, actual wooden French oak cubes during the aging process. We're going to do the raisins for the tannins during fermentation, primary fermentation, and then we'll add the oak cubes on the back end, the secondary fermentation or aging process. So a lot of times I will use the powdered oak tannins. It's just a lot easier, but we're doing this kind of in stages. So this time raisins in primary, oak chunks in secondary. So that's very well stirred. Should be plenty. So let's take another reading. Our specific gravity should be up over 1, probably 1.1, something to that level. Okay, let's get another. Yeah, you can see bits and little bits in there. That's the raisin pieces, and maybe some stems or things like that in there. We want that in there. That helps give it the body. So not worried about that. We'll get that out when we rack, and we'll probably do a couple of rackings, just to make sure we get everything out of there. Okay, we are really floating high now. We are now sitting at 1.12. This is going to be a fairly high ABV. 1.12. 15.75. So that's right there. I'm going to get a little more out of the raisins. We might actually hit 16. So that is right where we want it to be. So we'll put this back in. And then we are going to add our fermade O to help the yeast. Sometimes with juice concentrates, they don't have all of the nutrients and vitamins that are needed for the colony to grow, mostly because there's no skins or stems in there. So the raisins will help, but we're going to add a little fermade O to help even further, just so we give our yeast the best chance to succeed. And we are going to use 5 grams of fermade O, which is about a teaspoon. And I sanitized this a while ago and let it air dry. It is dry, so we won't have this getting stuck on the spoon or creating clumps. Now, if you've ever smelled fermade O, it's kind of a weird smell. It's got kind of a vitamin-y smell to it. It's not as bad as yeast holes, but it's not a great smell. But we're just going to, actually what we're going to do, I like to pre-mix my fermade O so that I get as many of the clumps out of there as I can. So I'll do 1 teaspoon. That's about pretty close to 5 grams. And you never want to stick your nose over that when you close it, or you'll get a nose full. Then, let's see, we're going to add a little bit of our must to this, just to have some liquid to mix with. It's not necessary to do this step, but as I said, I like to get it dissolved as best I can, just so that we don't have clumps in there. It's very clumpy anyway. It's hard to get all the clumps out of there, but this just gives it a little more of a chance, and we'll just try and get as many of those out of there as we can. Just kind of helps have a little bit better chances, as I said. And it's kind of clumpy, but we're going to go ahead and put that in there. And we just add that in there. Got some stuck to the spoon, measuring spoon. Okay. Put that back in the sand tub. All right. Now we just have one more ingredient that we are going to add. Just a little bit of a stir. Get some of that off the side. We're going to add our yeast. And as I said, we are using Lalvin K1 V116. And we're just going to use the whole packet. One packet is enough for 5 gallons, but I've had this yeast a little while. I probably should put it in some of the must or in some water beforehand and kind of get it started just to be sure, but it's not that old. I keep it in the refrigerator so that it lasts as long as it can. It's only a couple months old, so I'm not too worried about it. I'm just going to put the whole packet in there. Give it a little bit of a stir. Don't have to. It all sits on the top, but eventually it falls in. But I just like to stir, I guess. Okay. And it doesn't really matter if there's some on the sides because, like I said, we're using the whole packet. And it will... that is not all the yeast that you'll get out of a packet. It will multiply and colonize and many times over, maybe hundreds of times over. So there will be all kinds of yeast in there. So I think we're going to be good to go here. Okay. All we need to do now is get the lid on it. It's been cleaned thoroughly and sanitized in the sand tub. I drilled a hole. I should have showed you that before I put it on. Drilled a hole in the top and put a grommet. Well, it seals well, that's for sure. Oh, there we go. Drilled a hole in the top and put in the rubber grommet for the airlock. So, and the lid does have a rubber seal in it. It doesn't seal. I have found that it doesn't seal quite as well as a rubber bung and a glass fermenter or a gallon jug. It's okay. It seals enough to keep everything out. The airlock doesn't get as active with these, which is how I know it's not as good a seal as with a glass fermenter, but that's okay. It's keeping the bad things out, the bugs out, keeping the oxygen out, because it will start, as fermentation process starts, it creates carbon dioxide, and that is heavier than air, oxygen, so it pushes the oxygen out, thereby not allowing oxygen in. So again, remember, in Jesus' time, they left it open. They might have put, a lot of times they put animal skins over the vat to keep some of the bugs and dirt and things out, but for the most part, it was open to the elements. So, and you can kind of see if I push on the lid, it changes the pressure in the airlock. So it is sealed well enough to keep things out and create our fermentation process. So we're going to let that set for a week, maybe 2 weeks, as long as it takes. I will give this a swirl every day because we have the raisins in there. They will begin to float as they plump up and get saturated. And you want to make sure they stay wet. So I'll just give them a swirl. I may open them up and check them. And if they are getting a little dry on top, I'll push them down with a paddle or a spoon that's been sanitized. Just want to make sure they stay wet in there. Usually just a swirl every day, once a day, helps keep them soaked. Almost forgot, I need to take some notes of what we've done. And what I put on there is very simple. I forget a lot of times. Did I put a pound of sugar in there? Did I put half a pound? So we need to make notes, just so we know where things were when we started and what we put in them. So just going to put a little bit in there. I put the name of the wine. I'm calling it a WWJD Greanche. Put the date, today's date and the starting gravity, which was 1.12, I believe it was. I'll check back and make sure, but I believe that's what it was. We used the California concentrate CCC Greanche, 1 quart. We used 3 quarts of purified drinking water. Used 1 pound of 100% fruit seedless raisins and 1 pound of white granulated sugar, 5 grams of fermade O. The O, it's fermade O, not fermado, like tomato. Fermade O. There's two varieties that I generally use. The O is organic. There's also fermade K, which is the non-organic style of yeast nutrient. Generally, I use the fermade O. It's just what I started with, and they're roughly the same price. Fermade O might be a little more expensive, but not significant. And then we used 1 packet of Lalvin K1 V1116 yeast. Let's see. Is that everything we used? I believe so. So we put it in a 2-gallon plastic fermentation bucket. I also like to keep these notes in case I come back later and want to make it again. I'll know what I did to make it. We'll make adjustments as we go. If we want to add something or back sweeten later on, we'll add those to the notes, and I'll know exactly how to make it next time and recreate the product. So, and we'll just tape this bucket or this note right on the bucket with a little bit of masking tape. Sometimes the fermentations get a little active and they stain the paper, splatter all over it. I don't expect this one to get too crazy active, so it might get some splatters coming out of the top. If so, I can just move it to the side, but don't expect a lot there. There is kind of a recessed reservoir here on the bucket lid in case it does start to get a little active. It contains it in the lid long enough for me to realize I've got a volcano going, but we're gonna let that sit on the shelf. We'll check back in about a week. Okay, it's been exactly 7 days, and we are working on the Greanche, the What Would Jesus Drink Greanche, and the airlock has been pretty much still for a couple of days, so I suspect it's done. But we're going to go ahead and take a reading. Just go ahead and get it open, and I did open it every day or so, and press down the fruit cap to make sure there wasn't anything drying out on there and getting moldy or anything like that. So all right, it looks like there's nothing drying out. So let's go ahead and take a reading. I'm pretty sure we're going to be ready to rack this, but let's see. Here we are. I'm just going to take a reading. Try not to suck up all of the raisins. Put it down below the raisin cap there. All right. Okay, so it is, 1.022. Let's call it 1.022. We started at 1.12, so that may be done. What we're going to do, we're going to rack it to another pitcher, to another fermenter, get the raisins off of there. Then we're going to let it sit for a couple of days, and we'll take another reading, make sure it hasn't, if it drops, we know it's still fermenting. So it's okay. But I want to get it off of the raisins. So we're going to go ahead and rack, and we will need this up a little higher so we can get the siphon going. Take that out of there. We have our 1 gallon wide mouth fermenter. Don't really need a wide mouth. We could use one of the other ones, but I'm going to put this back in because there were some raisins in there, and I don't want them. Not that it really matters. Let's see if we can pour it in without getting those raisins in there. Probably won't be able to, but you want to be careful when you pour so you don't get the, whoops, there's one. So you don't create oxygen. You don't want oxygen. Alcohol is present now, and oxygen can oxidize the brew, create off flavors. You just don't want oxygen in there. But let's do this. If it's done, and let's calculate the alcohol here. If it is truly done, if it was done right now, which it very well could be, we'd be at 12.86. I'd call it 13%. That's pretty good. It may just be, there may be unfermentable sugars in there. The yeast may have hit its tolerance. What kind of yeast did we use? We used K1-1116 Lalvin. It may have hit its tolerance, so it may be done. It'll be a little sweeter. That's okay. Let's go ahead and stop yapping and start siphoning here. Get our auto siphon. Our hose. All of this, as usual, has been sanitized in our Star San solution in the sand tub. Decided to start doing these in the kitchen. Just seems a little easier to do these videos here in the kitchen, at least until you're probably getting tired of hearing me say this, at least until our studio is finished. Ran into a little bit of a stall with the studio, but we'll get there eventually. Okay, see if I can do this without making a mess here. Get our siphon going. Yeah, we're going to pick up some raisins here. This will not be our final racking, so we'll have a chance to get those out again with our second rack. But we need to get them off of the raisins so that we don't have to worry about any kind of spoilage there. So I'm going to make a couple notes here before I forget. With today's date, it's been exactly a week. And just note that we racked it to a wide mouth and record the gravity 1.022. So we know where we are next time. Okay, I think we got about as much out of there as we're going to get. And you can see it is very cloudy. That also is not unusual. We'll have to let it sit for a while, and it will clear up. It's an interesting color. I'll leave that in there. I'll give you a shot of what's left in the bucket here first. And it's just the raisins. Looks about the same, minus the liquid. So, yeah, it's pretty cloudy.
I'd like to get it a little higher, but I think it's okay. It started going up into the shoulder. That's not a lot of headspace. I think it'll be all right, especially with the current alcohol level at 13%. And there is a lot of carbon dioxide in there. Can't really see it, but there are some bubbles coming out of there. But we're going to go ahead and just get it capped. And we're going to use the same one. I'll just run it through the sand tub again. Yep, we're going to let it set for a few days. We'll take another reading. It'll probably continue to clear, hopefully, and we'll check back in. But for now, we're just going to get the airlock on it and let it sit for a few days. Got a lot of sanitization bubbles in there. But a few of you noticed there's some bananas sitting over here, and it's a little bit of a sneak peek of what's to come. I'm not going to give it away any more than I already have, but stay tuned for that. That'll be coming up soon.
Okay, we've had the Greanche in the secondary fermenter, and I put it in the fridge about 4 days ago, and it is starting to clear, but it is still very cloudy. It's only cleared to about here, so we're going to need to leave it in the fermenter. I'll probably leave it in the refrigerator. It's called cold crashing. It helps clear the wine. I could put some fining agents in it, like bentonite, which is kind of a food grade clay. I think I'm just going to let it cold crash. If it doesn't clear, after a week, I might try that. But I think we're about done with it. We're just going to let it sit. When we took a reading last, it was at 1.022. We started at 1.12, so that would be about 12.8%. I think it's probably done. We will do a final reading when it's cleared, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some French oak cubes. Got my little mini sand tub here because we're not really doing a whole lot, but I've got some French oak cubes that I've put it in some water and put it in the microwave for about 3 minutes just to kind of sanitize it and soak it. And we're just going to put those in to kind of help with the tannins, make it a little more full-bodied. I'm not going to put very many in there. There's only about 6 little cubes, so we don't want too full-bodied. What they drank back 2,000 years ago was not so full-bodied, so we're trying to emulate that. But we're going to put those in there, and of course we need to get a little taste. Gotta have a taste. I'm just going to set this off for a minute. Draw off a little bit. Like I said, it's still pretty cloudy. The stuff floating in there doesn't hurt you. It will settle to the bottom. It's just kind of an aesthetics thing more than anything, but that doesn't affect the taste. We're just going to draw a little bit off to have a taste here. Don't want to take too much because we're already kind of pushing the limits on the headspace. Gotta have some for a taste though. Put these in there real quick before I forget. Just gonna, using the tongs because that's hot. That was just below boiling. Again, if it is still fermenting, which I don't think it is, these may kill a few of the billions of yeast colonies that are in there, so not really worried about that. But go ahead and close that back up, keep all of the baddies out of it. We're going to leave the airlock on. This will go back in the fridge. It may take a couple weeks, but we're going to end it here, And I'll bring you back when probably it's 6 months or maybe a year, just to see how it aged and how it tastes. But let's give it a taste here before we end it. It's very alcohol. It's got a lot of alcohol in it. 12.8 or 13%. It's very fruity. It's got a tart flavor to it. You kind of get that tartness on the aroma too, but it's good. Interesting color. It's kind of I don't even know what color to call that. Almost kind of a golden tan maybe. And it'll change as it clears out. Like I said, there's a lot of sediment still in there that hasn't dropped to the bottom. So that'll about do it for the What Would Jesus Do Greanche. I want to thank you for tuning in and exploring this journey of ancient wines with me. If you like this, hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button, and if you want to keep being notified of more videos that we're doing like this, hit that notification bell. So, as always, Prost!